Be honest with me, when you create a brand new project and you have to create a brand new database design, do you sit down and think through everything and then create your schema carefully? Or do you just go to ChatGPT, copy the result and hope for the best and that nothing explodes? Let's be honest with each other, most people will choose option number 2. But this is a huge mistake, because first of all, you will introduce a lot of security issues. Your application will be unscalable, and thirdly, you will be unhireable if you have no clue how the underlying design works. But don't worry, after watching this video, everything will change. I will show you how to take an idea and turn it into an actual scalable and adaptable database design. We will cover key concepts like primary keys, foreign keys, relations, best practices, and much more. And now, without any further ado, let's learn about database design. Let's go! So to get started, the first step when you want to create a database design is to first of all formulate your idea. And that's what I have done right here. So I want to build a Twitter-like social media. And this means users can sign up, users can post tweets, upload photos or videos, follow other users. They can also be followed by other users, comment on posts, like tweets, and users can also subscribe to the premium feature. This means to get the blue check mark. So as you see, my description is relatively small. This means it's relatively summarized and I only say what I want to create. This means for your project, what you want to do is create a little description which features all of the features which you want to create. And what I've also done right here is underlined all of the features which I want to create. So I can also list them down below again. This means I want to have users, I want to allow users to tweet and upload media, I want to allow followers and following, I want to allow comments and likes, and also I want to allow users to subscribe to a premium plan. So now we know what our application does. We know the feature set, we know the requirements. This is step number 1. We are now finished. Now we want to continue with step number 2. And step number 2 is to create our database design in a entity relationship diagram. So let me go to the canvas. Right here I'm using Eraser, but you can use any other software, it does not matter. Then let's create a diagram. We want to create our entity relationship, and now we can get started. Let's first of all delete all of this default code because we want to start off fresh. We want to learn how to do everything, and now we can get started. So let's again open our canvas. As you see right here, these are all of our entities, tables, models, whatever you want to call them. This means we want to now first of all create our first table. And with what table should we start? In my opinion, you should always start with the user table, because at the end of the day, everything starts with the users. Everything starts with users signing up. This means let's first of all create our first model or table, which is the user table. So to do that, we want to create users. Let's open it. And now we want to add all of the properties which the user table has. So the user table has an ID, which is of type string, a username, which is of type string, and this is unique, of course. Then the user has an email, which is of type string, maybe a bio of type string, and yeah, that's all. I think this is relatively simple and this should be enough. So in most cases, you would probably say, okay, we are now finished. So this is our user table, right? We are finished with the user table. No, we are not finished. There's one thing missing. Every table in a database always needs a primary key. What is a primary key? Well, a primary key at the end of the day is a unique identifier. And a database, or in other words, a table needs a unique identifier because the unique identifier is there to, at the end of the day, identify each record in the table. It's also important that a primary key can't be null or undefined. It has to be a value which is unique, as mentioned. And at the end of the day, the purpose is first of all to identify each record in the database, but also a unique identifier helps with fast data retrieval and data integrity. So if we look at this table, this model, what value could be a primary key? The username? It's unique, sure, but you should never make business logic a primary key. Is email unique? No. Is bio unique? No, the ID is always unique. So right here we can say PK. So now we know, okay, we have a unique identifier and this is our ID. So now we are finished with this table. We can now create our next table. So let's go to our canvas or to our document, and the next table is for our tweets, for our media, for our followers, for our comments, likes and subscription. So what I will do is now create it myself and you will create it yourself, and once I'm finished I will come back. Alright, so now I have created all of the tables. This means if we go again to our document, I have a users table, I have a tweets table, I have a media table, a comments table, a follows table, a subscriptions table, and a likes table. If we look at the properties, they all look pretty much the same. This means I always add an ID which is of string and a primary key. Again, business logic should never be a primary key. If we go to the users table, I could make the username a primary key because it's unique, it's not nullable, it's not undefined or anything like that. But at the end of the day, it's business logic, and business logic should not be a unique identifier. So in every table I add an ID which is of string, and I always say the ID is the primary key. And then for my subscription, for example, I have my subscription type which is enum, start date, end date. So as you see, nothing groundbreaking. So now we have created all of our tables. This was step number 2. And this means we're now finished with that, right? Well, we're not quite finished. I want to do a bit of optimization. So currently in our tables, we only store the business logic which we need. This means the username, the email, the bio. This is cool. But you know what? There's one thing missing. And that's the created at timestamp. What do I mean with that? Well, a created at timestamp is something which gets generated whenever you add a new row in your database. So if I create a blog article on my website today, then I will have a new created at timestamp, which is today's date and right now the time. And you might think, hey, for my application, maybe I don't need a created at timestamp, and maybe you don't need it, but it's always better to add it even if you don't need it, because at some point you might need a created at timestamp, and in the future you can't add it anymore. If you want to add a created at timestamp, you have to add it at the start. This means my recommendation to you is always add a created at timestamp to all your tables, even if the table does not need it. Maybe in the future you will need it and it will bite you if you don't have it. So my recommendation to you, always add a created at timestamp, and right here created at is of type timestamp, and I will copy this and also add it in all of my other tables. Okay, so now we have done step 1. This means we have formulated our idea. We have done step 2. This means we have created all of our tables and we have done a bit of optimization. This means we first of all added our primary key, and we also added a created at timestamp because who knows, maybe you will need it in the future. And this means we can now continue with step number 3. And step number 3 is to create relations. This means, for example, the user table is related to the tweets table because a user can create a tweet, and then the tweet table is related to our media because a tweet can house media. And that's what we want to do. So if you talk about relations, you have a few types. You have a one-to-one relationship. This means, for example, one user can create one tweet, and one tweet can only be related to one user. Then you have a one-to-many relationship. This means one user can create many tweets, but each tweet can only be related to one user. And then you have a many-to-many relationship. This means many users could create many tweets and many tweets could be related to many users. In this case, this does not make sense, but this is what a many-to-many relationship is. And this image shows it to you again. We have a one-to-one relationship, we have a one-to-many relationship, and we have a many-to-many relationship. So now let's get started. And when I create relations, I always want to start with my users table because, as already mentioned, each application always starts with your users. And what's the first thing a user can do when the user is registered to your service or to this service? Well, the user can create a tweet. And what relationship do we have? Is it a one-to-one relationship? This means a user can only create one tweet. Or is it a one-to-many relationship? This means one user can create a lot of tweets, but each tweet is only related to one user. Well, as you saw, one-to-many makes the most sense. So in our code, we want to say, hey, the users.id should be less than our tweets.user.id. Okay, what did I just do right here? Well, first of all, we created a one-to-many relationship. So right here you have a syntax help, and then you see in eraser, if you do the less sign, then this is one too many, so one too many. Then we have the bigger than sign, this is many to one. Then we have this horizontal line, I'm not sure how you call it, this is one to one, and then we have this less and bigger than, and this is just many to many. So now you understand the syntax. So now we know, okay, user is one and tweets is many, one to many relationship. But right here I said tweets.user_id. But we don't have a user ID field, because if we go to the tweets, I don't have an user ID. So what is this field? Well, this field is a foreign key, and a foreign key is a field in the table that references the primary key of another table. So let me show you an example. So this is a user table, and we had an ID as in primary key. Okay, nothing new. But then you see we do a relationship right here, maybe a one-to-many relationship. And then we have an FK, which is an user ID. And a foreign key is again just a reference in a table which references the primary key. This means this foreign key helps us to create a relationship between the two tables. So now we know, okay, a foreign key is just there to, at the end of the day, allow us to create our reference, or not our reference, but our relationship. This means in our tweets, we can now go inside of here and say we will get a user ID, and this will be of type string and FK, because this is a foreign key. So now we have created our first relationship, and if you go to our chart right here, so let me just close this, you will see 1 to star. This means one user is allowed to create many tweets. And then we also have the user ID, and the user ID is the foreign key. Okay, so the first relationship is finished. One user is allowed to create many tweets. What's the next relationship? Well, if you open our document, you'll see in a tweet you are allowed to upload media. This means our tweets table is also related to our media table. What relationship is this? Is this a one-to-one relationship? This means one tweet is allowed to house only one media type. Or is this a one-to-many relationship? Is one tweet allowed to house multiple types of media? Well, in this case, this is a one-to-many relationship, because one tweet is allowed to house one image, one video, and then one GIF, for example. So you can store multiple media types in one tweet. So let's go to our code. And inside of here, we want to get our tweets.id. Again, we want to get a less than sign, because this is a one-to-many relationship. And we want to relate this to our media.tweets ID. Now, as you saw, again, tweets ID is something which does not exist in the media table. Because if you go to the media table, do you see a tweets ID? No, tweets ID is again a foreign key, and this helps us to create a relationship. If we now look at our canvas, you see, okay, one user is allowed to create many tweets. One tweet is allowed to create a lot of media, or in other words, store a lot of media. What's now the next relationship? Well, a user can create comments. What relationship is this? Well, it's a one-to-many relationship. One user can create a lot of comments. So let's say users.id, again smaller than one-to-many, and this will be our comments.user_id. Again, user ID is a field which currently does not exist, and that's because this is a foreign key. So let's go to our comments again. Let's add an user ID, and this will be of type string and FK, so foreign key. Of course, you could also name it a bit better, so you could say, for example, comment ID or user comment ID. This does not have any specific naming, you can call it whatever you want. People should just understand that this is a foreign key and this relates to your users table. So user ID, in my opinion, makes the most sense in this case. So now we have pretty much finished all of the relationships between the user and the individual tables. Now our individual tables will have other relations. So let's look at our tweets table. A tweets table has, at the end of the day, comments. This means we want to create a relation between our tweets and our comments. What relationship do we have? One-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many? Well, this is a one-to-many relationship. One tweet is allowed to house many comments, but each comment can only be related to one tweet. So we can say tweets.id less than, and this will be comments.tweetID. Tweet ID is again a foreign key, so string and an FK. So now we have created a relationship between our comments and our tweets. And as you see, if you look at the diagram, we have a one too many. So one and then the star, which is one too many. The next relationship will be for our subscription table. So a user can subscribe to a premium plan to, for example, get this blue check mark. What relationship do we have? Is a user allowed to create multiple subscriptions? Or is a user only allowed to create one subscription? Well, a user can only have one subscription. This means we have a one-to-one relationship. So let's get our user.id, and ID is our primary key. Then we want to use this horizontal line because this stands for one to one, and this will be equal to our subscriptions.user ID. User ID is again our foreign key, so we can go to our subscriptions table, and then inside of here we can add the user ID of type string and fk. So if you now look at our diagram, you see 1 to 1. So now we can continue with our next relationship, and this will be for our likes table. So what relationship do we have right here? Well, one user is allowed to create multiple likes, but each like should be related to one user. So let's get our users.id. This will be one too many, and we want to get our likes.user.id. So this is the first relationship. One user is allowed to create many likes, but a tweet is allowed to house many likes. This means we want to also relate our tweet table with our likes table. So let's get our tweets.id, our primary key, and this will also be one too many because one tweet is allowed to have many likes, and this will be our likes.tweetID. So if you now look at our diagram, you will see first of all a user is allowed to create many likes, and a tweet is allowed to house many likes. So we have two relationships for our likes table. And let's of course also store these foreign keys in our table. So we have our user ID of type string and fk, and then we have our tweet ID, which is also of type string and fk. So now we are pretty much finished. There's only one table missing, and this is our follows table. And this follows table is there to allow the user first of all to be a follower, but also to have followers. So what relationship do we have? Is this a one-to-one relationship? Does this mean one user is only allowed to follow one person? No, the user is allowed to follow multiple people. So is this a one-to-many relationship? No, not quite, because a user is allowed to follow many people, but many people are also allowed to follow this person. So one-to-many also does not work. So what relationship do we have? Well, this is a many-to-many relationship, because a user is allowed to follow many people, but many people are also allowed to follow this individual person. Many-to-many. And that's why I have also created a separate table. Whenever you want to create a many-to-many relationship, you create a separate table, and this separate table will house all of the information. This means what user the user follows, if this makes sense. So we can say, hey, the follows.follower.id, this is in foreign key, should be bigger than our users.id. So now I used a many-to-one relationship. This is pretty much the same thing to a one-to-many relationship. You just turn it around. Instead of one-to-many, you have many-to-one. And this means at the end of the day, a lot of people are allowed to follow the user. And again, this at the end of the day ends with a many-to-many relationship. And this follower ID in this case is in foreign key. And at the end of the day, a user is not only allowed to follow someone, a user can also be followed by someone. So we need also a follows.follow ID. And this will be again bigger than users.id. And now we have our two foreign keys, our follower ID and follow ID, and we can now add it to our follows table. So as you now see, I added these two properties as foreign keys to our table, and now we are finished. This is our entity relationship diagram. And let's again look at our follows table, because I think I confused a few people. So at the end of the day, a user is allowed to follow a lot of people, but this user can also have a lot of followers. And when you want to create a many-to-many relationship, you want to create a separate table. And in this separate table, we now house, first of all, what user follows what person. So if person X follows person Y, we store it inside of here. And then this person Y can also follow person X. And then we also store it inside of here. And this means we have this many-to-many relationship. Many people can follow each other. There's no sort of one person can only follow a lot of people and nobody can follow this person. So many-to-many. And you create this with the separate model, and that's what we have done. And let's maybe summarize everything again quickly. So first of all, we have our users table. This users table stores all of our core info, and we have an ID which is of string, which is of course the primary key. Now, as you see, the users table does not have any foreign keys, and that's because we don't need them inside of here. Then a user has a many-to-many relationship with the follows, because a user can follow a lot of people, but a lot of people can also follow the user. So this is the first relationship. Then a user can create a lot of tweets. This means we have a one-to-many relationship, and that's what you see right here. One and then a star. One-to-many. And the tweets table also stores an user ID, which is a foreign key. Then what other relationships do we have? Well, a user has a one-to-one relationship with the subscriptions table. One user can only have one subscription. Then the user also has a relationship with the likes, because at the end of the day, a user can create many likes, but each like can only be related to one user. And then at the end of the day, one user can also create a lot of comments. This means we have a one-to-many relationship, and we have our user ID, and this is our foreign key. And then our tweets table also has a relationship with our media and our comments and also our likes. This means a tweet can store a lot of media, a tweet can store a lot of comments, and a tweet can store a lot of likes. But each individual like, media, and comment has to be related with one tweet. Alright everyone, we have now created an entity relationship diagram, or in short, ERD. This is super important whenever you work in a company with a team, because you want to understand your database and your application in detail, and you can only do that if you have something to look at. And that's why you create ERDs. And at the end, I want to mention two best practices again. Please, primary keys should never be business logic. So in our users table, our username is unique and not nullable, not undefined. This means our username could be in primary key, but it's business logic. This means you don't want to make it in primary key. Always create an ID of type string, UUID or CUID, whatever you want, and add this as in primary key. And secondly, always add and create it at timestamp, even if you think you don't need it, because at some point you might need it, and if you don't have it, well then you're kinda... I think you all understand what I want to say. So yeah, we're finished with this video. I hope you could learn a lot. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you stay to the end, then let me know what you would like to see next or what you would like to see improved or anything. I'm always open to feedback. And now, I hope you enjoy your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I know I already mentioned it. So yeah, enjoy your day and bye. You know what? Do you want to see the background? I will show it to you. 1 second. Oh. Do you even see anything? Wait. Isn't this nice, friends? Okay, bye.